You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan, and I'm a nervous wreck. Don't get me wrong, I think we're going to win the election. I feel basically very positive. I'm tight-fisted, teeth clenched, head up, and raring to go. But now and then the tiniest notion that we could be in for 4 years more, if only 4 years, by God, of seeing that face and hearing that voice saying over and over again those noxious, nauseating phrases is enough to make me more than a nervous wreck. Of course, I'm not the only one. The population of this country apparently feels the same way. Almost all of it. It's just that about half are too cowardly to admit it because of peer male pressure. But more about this in Fighting Words at the end of the program. Our guest for the conversation today is a real winner, especially when we want to recall and reaffirm our triumphs. Clara Bingham, prize-winning author and all-round terrific writer. She's given us an oral history of the contemporary women's movement, and is it ever dynamite? More about that later, too. In fact, enough of this preamble stuff. Let's get going. Oh, and we're going to skip going inside the headlines this week because much of it is covered in a sizable Fighting Words at the end. So we'll take a brief pause and come back with our special guest. Subscribe to this program on your favorite podcast platform and leave us a review. Follow us on Twitter at WMC Live, like our Facebook page at facebook.com/WMC Live, and visit us at WMCLive.com for more information about our show and our guests.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
My guest for today's conversation is Clara Bingham, an award-winning journalist, documentary film producer, and the author of the books The Movement, Witness to the Revolution, Women on the Hill, and the co-writer of Class Action. A former Washington, D.C. correspondent for Newsweek, her writing has appeared in Vanity Fair, The Guardian, and The Daily Beast, among many others. And we're here today to discuss her newest book, The Movement, How Women's Liberation Transformed America, 1963 to 1973. Here she is. Clara, dear, welcome back to Women's Media Center Live. It's good to have you here.
Thanks for having me, Robin. I'm so excited to talk to you.
Well, I'm excited to talk to you because I, as you know, among other things, am an anthologist. So I know and appreciate the skill of such creativity and assembly when I encounter it. And what you have done in this oral history is remarkable. It is, among being many things like inclusive and compendious, and I mean, it just goes on and on and on. But it is also, oh my God, accurate.
Oh, thank you.
Oh, God.
Oh, my gosh. To hear that from the queen of this movement. That is just
Clara,
music to my ears.
You do not know. I mean, I kept waiting for the foot to fall somewhere. You know, there's going to be some small error, It never did. It really and truly, in the smallest detail and the largest, is accurate. And I just got up and danced around the room with awe and thanks to you, because if anybody wants to read what was really happening in the words of the people who helped make it happen, and do so without, I don't know, conflating it with 16 other different irrelevant things, or their own private agenda, or many other problems, and read the real truth. This is it. Oh, God. Congratulations.
Well, Robin, thank you. Really, I mean, that is just the best, most gratifying thing I have heard about the book because it comes from you.
Yeah.
And it really, because you were there on the ground at so many different parts of this movement, from the very beginning in the civil rights movement on to, of course, so many of your other amazing moments, like the Miss America pageant
Oh, God.
protest that you engineered, and of course, Goodbye to All That, which is one of my favorite pieces of writing.
Oh,
really is. I just love it.
well,
love it, and love what you did. So you were there, and you would know if
well,
I got it right.
you got it right. You got it. I mean, sometimes you were inside my head. I don't know how. You got even at motivations. Maybe it's because of the words you used, which were the person's own words. But how did you come to do this book? I mean, of course you had done Witness to the Revolution, which won all these prizes and should have and earned it. But how did you come to do an oral history in the voices and memories and minds of the people who made it, and do it so audaciously?
Oh, well, it did. It was very ambitious and and terrifying the whole time, because I just knew that taking on the subject was just so laden with so much baggage.
Oh, God, yes.
There's the race
Yeah,
baggage,
of
which was a really
course.
big part of it, and which I
Huge.
wanted to tackle as much as I could. And then, of course, radicals versus conservatives, early feminists versus later feminists.
Yep.
And I'm a journalist. So it's not as if I've been steeped in this material my whole professional life, even though I've written a lot about women's issues. It's been at different
I'll
times
say.
of different times in history. So this was my first deep dive. And the reason why I knew I had to do this book, even though it was such a daunting undertaking, was after I wrote Witness to the Revolution, during which I interviewed many men who were heads of so many of the anti-war and civil rights and Black Power movements. I realized I had one chapter on feminism, which was mostly about Goodbye to All That, which you brilliantly penned, and the women who had been part of the anti-war movement who split off, the younger radicals. And I realized this is the movement that was created in the 60s. It was given birth to in the 60s, but that really lasted the longest and changed lives for most people. 50%
You're
of the
right. You're so
population.
right. I remember my famous last words to Abby and Jerry, Abby Hoffman, Jerry Rubin, and oh God, Tom Hayden, because they were all going to Chicago, and they were for the convention and demonstrations, and they were horrified that I, as a token woman in the Yippie steering committee, wasn't going. And I said to them, I think I think I'm going to do something sort of important, and I think it just might, in fact, have a greater resonance. And they looked at me as if I had landed from Mars. Honest to God, Claire. And you're right. By God, it did. When we look back and we think what really changed people's lives, well, that did.
Exactly. And you hit the streets just in Atlantic City just about 2 weeks after the Chicago convention bloodbath.
That's right.
And they got all the attention.
That's right.
And of course they got the great trial, and
Yeah.
they were the center of the culture, really, for at least 2 years. And meanwhile, you were the real revolutionary.
Nibble, nibble,
who
nibble.
was changing minds one by one.
Yeah.
And what was so interesting to me just about Miss America was finding different people who I talked to and hadn't really expected to, who read about it and then learned about the movement because of the press coverage that you were so aware of, because you were a Yippie and you understood, the power of the press and communicating it. And for example, I remember interviewing Michelle Wallace, the
Right.
Faith Ringgold's daughter,
Mm-hmm.
who said that she read about it, and so did Frances Beale.
Yes.
And Black women who were not as involved in the movement at the time,
Right.
but were about to get there. And then even my Aunt Sally, who
Yes, that's right.
who
Sally
read
Bingham,
about it,
the writer.
and she of course told me about how incredibly uncomfortable the bras were that women wore in those days, which
Yes.
for younger women like me was hard to understand. Why would you want to get rid of your bra? I mean, thank God for my bra, but
Yeah, of course.
it really was such a huge padded, torpedo shaped contraption.
Yeah, it really
that it
weird.
deserved the trash can.
Well, we did it, out of rage and out of our own emotional fury. The goodbye to all that came out of the same place, as a matter of fact. But what I find so remarkable in this book is the juxtaposition of voices. I can just see you down there. I must have been on the floor with a million little pieces of paper with different,
Yeah.
with, oh my God. Yeah, I mean, it was one thing to seek out and commission pieces from somebody who had spent her whole life or large portions of it working on whatever, say, child care issues or something. But it's another thing to catch them as they say it, and to do so and catch the flavor of the language and catch the time of the language. It is an extraordinary accomplishment. I really, and race is part of it.
Thank you. I love telling history through oral history, which I discovered with Witness to the Revolution. I feel like it's a really accessible way for people to learn history, just generally as a form. And the reason why is it's more emotionally palpable.
It's immediate.
And I wanted the reader, exactly, it's immediate, it's visceral. And I wanted the reader and also listeners, there's an amazing audiobook, which they hired 13 actors to give that a try. It's pretty fantastic. And it's like a table read, kind of,
God.
hearing all the different voices. And I wanted people to be, to hear only from the women, mostly women. I also interviewed some men who were on the streets in the room, making change, and not from historians who were pontificating about it. And so that the reader could understand what it felt like. And in particular with this movement, because the personal is political, as you all were saying all the time, because of course this was a bedroom and a boardroom and a factory floor revolution
everywhere.
Yep. And so it was and everyone had their own very personal experience with going through the change, having their click moment. And I wanted to bring that alive and make it feel real and not like sort of boring history.
Oh, it's not boring history. I'm so grateful to you, just personally grateful, for telling the story about the CORE office, Congress on Racial Equality, because
yes, which you wrote about so well.
Yeah, I did, but but most people have averted their gaze to this day. They don't like to refer to it or reference it or cite it. And it is the kind of thing that went on all the time and gave us all such chronic grief and indigestion.
Would you retell that story just briefly?
Well, it was, I can't find it. Let me see. Give you another page number.
So it was after Schwerner, Cheney, and Goodman.
Yeah.
After their bodies had been discovered.
Right.
And you were in the New York CORE office.
Yeah.
And they had dredged a dam.
Yes, that's right. That's right.
And in that, they had discovered mostly female bodies.
That's right. 16 female bodies, dismembered parts of female bodies, and they were and so one of the young men said, "God damn it! There's been and there was one male body. And he said, "Goddamn, there's been a brother killed and we never even knew about him." And I thought, what? And he went on, and everybody sympathized with him, and the 3 or 4 women in the room sort of studied our shoes. And I thought I must have misheard. And so finally I said, excuse me, what did you say one male body was found? And he said, yeah. And I said, well, but there were 15 other, there were female bodies. There were parts of all these women. And he said, oh, yeah, right. No, those were clearly sex murders. Those weren't political.
Right.
And
Right.
the floor just dropped out from under me. My heart broke. It broke on the spot, because it's hard to communicate to people how deeply enmeshed we were in the struggles of others.
Right.
And the largest struggle at that point, of course, in this country was race. And we were there. We were getting killed. We were getting shot at. We were getting beaten up. We were getting raped. And it was all okay, because it was for the cause and our brothers in arms, and to find this kind of deep betrayal was so devastating. Just, so. And I was very, very grateful, because it wasn't done. Mostly, if people tell the story at all, somehow they'd manage to tell it in a racist fashion, or stupid fashion in any event. And to do it with sensitivity the way that you did, and to do it with understanding, and to make it clear this is why the women were so enraged, made a big difference. So I thank you for that. It's amazing.
Well, I was so fascinated by how strong the civil rights, what a large role the civil rights movement played
Huge.
in the women's movement, and almost everyone I interviewed or quoted had been involved in the civil rights.
That's right.
Just before the anti-war movement.
Just like the first time around.
Just
like suffrage.
Yes, exactly. Just like suffrage, from Heather Booth to Nancy Stearns to,
right.
Obviously Eleanor Holmes Norton and Polly Murray. And
yep.
I mean, the kind of, the other thing that I discovered is that it wasn't just that women like you learned their organizational skills in the civil rights movement, and also then, discovered how betrayed they felt by their brothers, their comrade in arms, but also the sort of the moral leaders and often strategic leaders of the women's movement were Black women who were deeply enmeshed in the movement. So Florence Kennedy and Polly Murray, of course, and Eleanor Holmes Norton is such a great example.
To this day,
she goes to Mississippi in '64, and she's a Yale Law School student, and she gets Fannie Lou Hamer out of jail, and then fast forward to working at the ACLU in the late '60s. And the Newsweek women come to her, the white Newsweek women, and show her the masthead of the magazine. And she looks at it and sees that all of the jobs at the top of the masthead were occupied by men. All the jobs at the bottom of the masthead were occupied by women.
What do you
know? And to her, this was a cut and dry civil rights case. It was and it was just like all the race discrimination cases she had been, bringing.
That's right.
And this was the first time anyone had done this for women. And because she had to teach a lot of those women, there ended up being 46 who signed on to the class as the first class action ever for sex discrimination in 1970. She had to teach a lot of those white privileged women who had gone to Seven Sister colleges that in fact they were being discriminated against.
That's right.
Because they didn't understand.
They didn't get it.
And because Eleanor had been in the, trenches, she understood. And would you say also Florence Kennedy played a role as well?
Yes, I would. I mean, she was outrageous and hilarious and funny, and insouciant. So it wasn't in that sense as as deep and meaningful and serious as Eleanor, who to this day is an amazement, or Polly, but it was a very important role as well. And she went touring around and giving lectures. I no, I mean it. There has been a whole vast history, semi-underground, semi-up above ground, that you have now had a very large voice in earthing and bringing to light, because it's drives me a little bit nuts when some young person with her combat boots still squeaking from the Army Navy store, sort of sidles up and says, "Well, you people never dealt with race," and I think, oh God, where do I begin?
Where do you start?
Yeah, exactly. And
we start in the book. I start with Frances Beale.
That's right.
I tracked her down in her nursing home in Oakland. In June of 2021. It was hard to find her. It was so exciting when I got to her. And
I bet.
We had an amazing long talk, and she wrote, along with her Black women's group in SNCC in New York. She'd had a consciousness raising group that she started, and they were really delving into what we now call intersectionality.
That's correct.
And they wrote, which you brilliantly put into Sisterhood is Powerful, in your first amazing anthology that shook the world. A black women's manifesto.
That's right. That's right.
And to be Black and a woman, and really explaining how you can't achieve one without the other. You can't have full freedom for women without having freedom for Black people, and you have to do both together.
They're inseparable. That's right. That's absolutely right. But in that sense, it was always one struggle. But
then also very divided. For example, at Newsweek, here's an example. There were Black women who worked at Newsweek who chose not to join the class action.
Right.
Because they thought it was a white women's issue.
Yeah.
And I interviewed Black women who were at Columbia in '68 who didn't want to join women. They felt that they were, and many women, like Michelle Wallace, of course, talked a lot about how it was taboo to be affiliated in any way with the feminist movement, which was, of course, predominantly white, because that is what America is. You couldn't help but have it be majority white.
Well, but I look back at that and I think to myself, why didn't we simply say, well, we're not Black, and so we can't pretend that we're Black, and we don't want, that would be insulting, and so, but we are women, so we might as well put the pedal to the metal on that issue, because that is an issue on which we are oppressed. And I don't know why we were so guilted. I do know why, of course, but looking back, it seems a tremendous waste of energy, although I'm sure it was put to good use. But
one thing that I discovered, just as a generational outsider, I was born in 1963 when the book starts, is for example, when you hit the boardwalk in New Jersey in 1968,
right?
The Civil Rights Act had just been passed 4 years before. The Voting Rights Act, 3 years before,
right?
And the country before that was entirely segregated.
Yep.
And even in the North, obviously Jim Crow in the South, but I have a chapter on women like Barbara Smith going to
kitchen table,
going to Mount Holyoke in the late 60s and mid 60s, and being one of the first Black women in that college. Like, colleges had just begun integrating,
right?
And so there was very little integration before.
I know.
And gosh, Shirley Chisholm gets elected from Brooklyn in 1968, and she's the first Black woman, member of Congress.
Yeah.
And so it was when it came to race, the country was just, everyone was just getting to know each other.
That's true. And also, we were young women who had come. I mean, there were sort of two routes into the women's movement at that point. One was the route that the now women took, which was women who had been, in some way organized in women's groups, but more
Mm-hmm.
ladies kind of groups. But they were for equality, but they didn't want to make too many waves. And then there was the left, and so we came in through the left. We didn't know yet that our brothers in the left could be just as sexist as our brothers in the right, but we would deal with that in time. And so those routes became training grounds for us, and
Right,
and
right.
and us being white and brown and anybody women but black, because black women were already forming very separate cohesive units. It's amazing that we got off the ground at all. Honest to God, Clara, it's just incredible. And what you've done is so. Did you have to? How long did this tome take? Literally, I mean,
Oh, it took 5 years
yeah.
from the very beginning to publication. So, maybe really more like 5.5, 4.5. But it was, and my first draft was twice the size of the current book. The
Yeah.
final draft. So I had to cut it in half. It was so hard taking on these 10 years, and they were so rich and full. For example, I had to cut the Great Witch chapter that I had when you went to the bridal fair and to
Oh, right.
the stock exchange. There was, I just had, it was killing
No.
babies. I was literally crying as I chapters because
No, no.
there was so much good stuff. And I also tried to show how this wasn't just political.
Yeah,
This
that's right.
so therefore I interviewed the women who founded Our Bodies Ourselves, who were at the forefront of the women's health movement.
Absolutely.
And then, the first woman to run the Boston Marathon, Bobby
Yep.
Gibb, who ran it illegally in 1966, the same year that NOW was founded.
Yeah.
But she wasn't involved with NOW at all. She was just doing her own thing. And
you got in Billie Jean. You got in. I mean, it's an
right,
incredibly
and
rich.
Judy Chicago and the
Yep,
artist.
that's right. That's right. That's right.
So I wanted to show how broad it was. That it was about women finding themselves, being able to self-actualize, to be able to be who they needed to be.
Yeah.
And so it was sort of more profound than just politics.
You did it.
There's a scene where Bobby Gibb, who was just this amazing woman who's now a sculptor, told me that she jumped out of a bush at the starting line at the Boston Marathon wearing a hoodie, trying to hide that she was a woman. But it soon became revealed, and she got to Wellesley, which is halfway through the race, and the Wellesley students had heard on the radio that a woman was running the marathon, because of course women were told by doctors,
right, of course,
that their uterus would fall out if they ran such long distances.
God, oh my God.
And Bobby knew this wasn't true, because she'd been running herself in the woods with her dogs for years and was a natural.
And she still had her uterus too. She still had it.
Exactly. And the Wellesley girls started screaming and crying and singing Ave Maria, and Bobby suddenly realized, oh, this isn't just about me.
Yeah.
This is about my quest to do what I needed to do, which is run a long distance race, is really much bigger. And it's about proving to the world that women are not physical weaklings.
Yeah.
And so each one of you were representing so many more people.
Well, and we felt
and of course, this is just a drop in the bucket. I mean, there was so much going on in different regions that I didn't get to cover, and different, parts of different industries.
Well,
and,
I want more. I want more.
I know. I really wanted 2 volumes.
Yeah. I could see it. Believe me, I could see it. Because I mean, you're right. There was first there was the private rage. There was the explosion in the heart. The what I call the amulet, ripping off the amulet of madness, until you realize, and then you get to see exactly what's going on, and you just explode. So that there's that personal, and the personal is very political, and then there comes the making the connections with what other women are feeling, and that's brain blowing. And then there's making those connections with what the culture is doing and what history has done. And it keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, Clara. And you
I
just
love the historians and the art historians and the historians. I mean, when, Barbara Smith just, who
yes,
ends up along with Alice Walker being one of the first women to teach, Black women's literature. And
that's
Alice
right.
Walker just rediscovers Zora Neale Hurston, who's buried in a, unnamed grave in
That's
Florida where
right.
she, and of course revives, her book, which ends up being one of the most important novels in the 20th century.
Yep.
And everyone, the young Yale students who were the first women at Yale are told, there are no women who've done anything in history of importance. And
Yeah,
they
I
start
know.
digging through the library
Oh
and discover the
God.
suffragists, which they
God.
didn't even know about, which were never even taught.
I know,
Like
it
just
blows your
discovering I
mind.
thought that discovery of women's history and literature was so powerful
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
exciting.
Yeah, it was. It was.
And what I hope is that this book will be, of course, 50 years later for younger women who didn't know anything about, the Miss America pageant and Title IX.
Well,
That
that's right.
so many people don't know this story.
Yeah.
And I felt that it was really important, especially for the younger generation who are going to be the first generation in 50 years to have lost their,
That's right.
incredibly, important right to control their bodies.
Yeah.
That these women need to understand whose shoulders they stand on.
Yeah.
And,
Well, you did it.
that is crucially important, especially today. I had no idea that this book would be a history that was so relevant.
Boy, is it ever.
Unfortunately.
Is it ever. Is it ever. It is the book that might just save us. I mean, I don't mean that as hyperbole. I think to throw open pages to that chorus of voices, individual and collective, is a major contribution, and I am so grateful to you. Thank you, thank you. We should all buy at least 5 copies. And
Christmas is coming,
yes, it
and
is.
Hanukkah and the holidays.
That's right, and
So
Diwali, and Diwali, and
Kwanzaa.
Kwanzaa. Yeah, you got it. You got it. Lots of reasons. Because it's just marvelous, and you can't put it down because you want to see who said what next. So it's a very personal book, and you you begin to write in the margins. Yes, yes! Exclamation point. Many. Oh yes. And then I've realized at a certain point I was saying yes, yes to the whole damn book. So I might as well not say that anymore because it was okay, Robin. You can the book. Believe me, the book knows you agree with it. No, it's just brilliant, and I'm deeply grateful. And to you for everything that you do, and for what is there a next book, or dare I not ask at this point because you're still
I don't
recovering?
know yet. I'm actually trying to figure that out. And all I know is I am devoted to this, to telling oral histories. I just love the form. I love this
Yeah.
medium.
Yeah.
And I need to write about people who make change. So
boy, that's pretty damn good.
I have to figure that out.
Oh, well, I will be your whatever. I'll go pick up your cleaning. I'll type your manuscript. I'll do whatever I can to be of help in my somewhat antiquated form now, but nonetheless still going. And I'm so grateful to you, and we all are. And as more women get this book and read this book, they will be all grateful all over again. It's just so delicious, and it's such fun. It's such bloody fun.
Oh, well, that's the other thing. You all had such an amazing sense of humor.
Yeah, we did.
It wasn't all just, screaming bra burners.
Go
as
no.
the movement has been sort of reduced to. There were songs and amazing humor and costumes and just,
That's right. That's right.
delight and joy along with all that anger.
Yeah.
And the power of sisterhood, which
That's
was
right.
just palpable, how exciting that was for all of you.
It was so moving and it was so real. And it still is. And you, as you begin to see it catch fire around the whole world, what women did in Iran, for example, what women are trying to do in Afghanistan, for God's sake. I mean,
Right.
is
Heartbreaking.
is amazing. And there is a women's movement wherever you go. There is a women's movement, and very often you see scribbled on the walls and in graffiti, the two circles or the one circle with a fist in the center. And
Right.
it blows me away. So I'm so grateful to
Well,
you,
Robin,
Claire.
thank you. I am so grateful to you for what you did. And you were absolutely such an incredibly important, brilliant, and literate force that just drove, had such a major impact in pulling women together, especially with your anthologies and with Witch and all of the different activism that you participated in.
Well,
so we all owe it to you.
In your hands, I am a creature of history, which is very impressive to me. Wow, but but I'm also just very grateful. So thank you, and take care.
Okay, you too.
We need to take one more break here, but I'll be back. Oh yes, with some pre-election fighting words. You bet. The Women's Media Center, founded in 2005 by Jane Fonda, Gloria Steinem, and myself, is a progressive, nonpartisan, nonprofit organization working to make women visible and powerful in media. You can learn more about the WMC at womensmediacenter.com.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan.
We won't go back. Those are fighting words. Remember that brief, shining moment when Kamala brought back the joy? Not Camelot, not theater, but real electoral joy. Fun and excitement and hope. Oh, dear God, hope. Before we got worn down again with anxiety and depression, barraged with propaganda, before the same old crap washed over us like waves, rinsing away our trust. Trust in elections, trust in government, trust in the courts, trust in journalism, trust in democracy. Hold fast. It can come again. But first, freedom is the need to tell the truth. Here are 5 truths. 1. The Washington Post and the Los Angeles Times editorial boards both endorsed Kamala Harris. It's not true that the papers didn't endorse, although that's how it's being reported by other news organizations owned by other billionaire oligarchs. Owners of the Post and LA Times did not allow the papers to publish the endorsement. That's what happened. That, my friends, is fascism. 3 days later, Post and Blue Origin owner billionaire Jeff Bezos, founder and CEO of Amazon, the world's largest e-commerce and cloud computing company, published a disingenuous op-ed claiming contradictorily that since Americans no longer trusted the free press, there was no point in taking any principled stand. Honest to God, he wrote this. He admitted that it would be easy to blame others for the post's fall in credibility, but, quote, a victim mentality will not help, close quote. Well, that takes care of that. He confessed that the timing was unfortunate, while noting that one of his company's leaders had in fact met that very day with Donald Trump, although of course there was no quid pro quo. That, my friends, is fascism, despite the 200,000 subscription cancellations. Democracy dies in Amazon. We've been here before. We won't go back. There was a Nazi rally at Madison Square Garden in New York last week on October 27th. Rerun the speeches to hear them clearly or read them online. This wasn't fascism approaching. This was fascism arrived. I won't repeat here the filthy sexism and racism that was masquerading as just jokes. But this time it staggered even Republican apologists. To date, no one has apologized. Meanwhile, the richest man in the world, they change places, you know, Elon Musk, is literally paying people in Pennsylvania to vote for Donald Trump. He doesn't even have to pretend otherwise. He can afford not to. When Trump says, just vote for me this one more time, I promise you, you won't have to do it again, he means that. You won't have to vote ever again. Nor is there anywhere else to go. We are forced to promote this very commentary, on Facebook, owned and reigned over by Mark Zuckerberg, yet another billionaire techno-oligarch, because there's no alternative except to live in solitude with no ways to reach anyone. We need to get serious about trust, so that these companies are broken up the way they were 100 years ago. Amazon, Meta, X, and all the rest. We've been here before. We won't go back. We need a new leader like FDR all over again, one with overwhelming mandates who was able to accomplish such muckraking. Perhaps the first woman in this country's history will not only win the presidency, although it's one hell of a start, but also win the House and keep the Senate, or at least start the process of peeling off fascism. 3. I am not a fascist, said by Donald Trump, 2024. I am not a crook, said by Richard Nixon, 1997. We've been here before. We won't go back. Fascism is the byproduct of fear. Fear gets defined as multiple, while power is defined as singular. We speak often of having fears, but rarely of having powers. One could argue that the most pernicious use of power is to convince us of its singularity. Yet we manufacture it faster than any other emotion, while fear, on the other hand, longs to be dissolved. Oblique brilliance, this ugliest and coldest of energies, enunciates itself in the negative by absences, absence of trust, absence of light, of love. Fear requires consequent force. Here, Trump has been useful to the techno-oligarchs. Otherwise, he's ultimately unimportant and dismissible to them, merely a tin soldier distraction along with the 75 million people in his cult who voted for him and have by now completely forgotten and erased any trust they may have once had in any of their own institutions. 4. But we've been here before, and fascism ultimately does not prevail. Why? Because it is brittle, unnatural, imposed. Fascism is patriarchy at its essence. It requires the monopolizing of power, which in turn requires the defining of power as a static and singular object, the better to monopolize it. This is why tyrants always want more power, more. Fluid, multiple powers cannot be employed to such an end because they are uncontrollable, spontaneous, like laughter. Because the more powers that exist, the more likely they are to be distributed via many vehicles and channels. And the more channels, the less likely it is that consciousness can be destroyed. Recognizing these qualities of power, diverse, multiple, active, is a political act. For instance, fame is a sort of power, but power is not necessarily a sort of fame. Wealth is a form of power, but power isn't necessarily a form of wealth. Youth and age are types of power, but power isn't a quality of age. The more powerful you become, the more rigid and abstract are the laws you forged and follow. The more powerless you are, the more fluid yet specific are your realities. The specific inevitably leads to an awareness of the unique and respect for difference. Control becomes an imperative, so that we always must believe they are winning. They are not. 5. We are winning, and we won't go back. In this specific electoral case, Republicans are the losers and fascists, the biggest losers of all. When Republicans lose the Electoral College this year, they will have done so 4 times out of the last 5, 2008, 2012, 2020, 2024. And when they lose the popular vote, they'll have done so 8 times out of the last 9, 1992, 1996, 2000, 2008, 2012, 2016, 2020, 2024. The country is not with them. The country is staunchly opposed to them on abortion, on Social Security, on expanding health care, on all the basic issues we care so passionately about. Carry yourselves like winners, women, because you are. Don't fall for the lies. Early voting numbers are off the charts because people are getting used to voting earlier and because Democrats usually vote early. Republicans were encouraged not to vote early, but then were flipped as the Republican leadership said, "Oh, wow, go vote early." We don't know whether they're secretly voting for Kamala or even for Nikki Haley, but it is always better for America when more people vote, and voting is up across the entire electorate. Specifically, early voting is astronomical in 2 states, Georgia and North Carolina. Close to 40% of the electorate in Georgia has already voted. That is astonishing. That's women voting on reproductive freedom. It's women, black and white, and of all pigmentations. And it's men of color, too, folks. Plus the youth vote, which always comes in late. And it's huge this year. So don't believe everything the Washington Post will refuse to tell you. Remember Hannah Arendt's words. The ideal subject of totalitarian rule is not the convinced Nazi or communist, but people for whom the distinction between fact and fiction, true and false, no longer exists. Then go out there and do anything and everything you can to save an idea that this republic shall not perish from the earth. And that's our show for this week. You can follow me on social media at The Robin Morgan. You can check out my blog at robinmorgan.net, and you can find my new novel, Parallax, and my just-out new book of poems, Harvesting Darkness, wherever books are sold. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not necessarily represent the WMC. Here's the family for Women's Media Center Live. Executive producer, as well as founding and sustaining sponsor, Regina K. Scully. WMC president and co-executive producer for this program, Julie Burton. I'm Robin Morgan, your producer and host. Thank you for being with us. Join us next time on Women's Media Center Live.